Hi, everyone. I'm Sage. Um, I just got my undergrad from UC Davis. I did this work with Josh during his graduate level computational storytelling class. So I'm very excited to present this to you all. So why did I do any of this in the first place? It's a story we've all kind of heard. We have, on one hand, we want to make games with a really strong story. On the other hand, we want to give players a lot of agency and we want NPCs to have a lot of autonomy. So how do we balance the two of these things? On one hand, you have the great story from a really strong story, but you have to keep that on the rails. On the other hand, you can have really great emergent properties from strong autonomy, but you're also not guaranteed an interesting story at all. So I was thinking, is there a way we can create a strong autonomy system and still have some of the narrative intrigue of a strong story system? And obviously, I'm not the first person to have this idea in the world. Facade and Versu are both fairly story prioritizing systems. Facade tries to introduce some autonomy through joint behaviors, allowing the NPCs to respond to player actions. Versu is specifically designed around NPC autonomy, but it still has a drama manager that's trying to keep things on the rails. So in that sense, neither of these two really achieve strong autonomy, but they do manage to tell great stories. Next up is Bad News. Bad News kind of gets the best of both worlds by having a strong autonomy phase and a strong story phase. In the beginning, the simulation is completely strong autonomy, but then once the wizard and actor take over, it's completely strong story, and all of the NPCs are kind of just puppets for the wizard and actor to play with. The issue with that is that it's a huge amount of work for these players to go through, and basically nobody else can do it, which is why you don't have a lot of people outside of this community who have actually played Bad News. And then we come to Loose Ends, which isn't, it's not like the rest of these. It's a mixed initiative authoring tool rather than a simulation. However, what Loose Ends did that was really great is that it allowed the player to receive suggestions from a story sifter in order to pick which actions happen next. So even though they were going with a really strong story approach, what they also did was they basically used a story sifter to help manage that drama. So I thought, how can we integrate this with a stronger autonomy system? And first, let's go ahead and describe how that strong autonomy system works. You need to have characters, obviously. And the way that time works in the Shepherd system is that each character basically takes their turn, and then time moves back to the beginning. So it's kind of like a turn-based system. Here we have Garfield and Odie. There are two characters for this demonstration. Garfield has a list of actions that are available to him. He can consider every one. In the Shepherd system, you have actions that you do on your own and actions that you do with other characters. In this case, we're just going to consider actions that you can do with other characters because it makes the example work. So Garfield has all these actions. How does he pick between them? The answer is, number one, each action has a list of tags that kind of characterize that action. I'm going to give the examples of cruel and kind actions in a second. So an example of a cruel action might be kicking Odie. An example of a kind action might be sharing some lasagna with Odie. I don't know if Odie wants lasagna, to be honest. Either way, how does Garfield pick between these? We also have traits. Traits characterize Garfield. They tell him which actions he wants to do. One of Garfield's traits might be cruel, which tells him that he really wants to be cruel to other people. He gets utility from being cruel. Another trait might be Garfield. We might use this to represent Garfield-specific behavior. And each trait evaluates each action. So we generate a utility score from each trait on each action. We sum up the utility scores that each trait generates to give us a utility score for each action. And then using those utility scores, we make a weighted random choice to decide which action to perform. That's our strong autonomy system, right? Each character is making their own choices based on their traits, based on the actions available to them. To this, we're going to add the drama manager. And the drama manager is also going to evaluate each action, and it's going to give us like an autonomy score, a drama score. So when it does that evaluation, it's asking how many plot threads does this action advance? How close is each plot thread to being completed? It assigns each action a drama score, and then we combine those when we're making our weighted random choice. How does the drama manager work? I'm going to divert from that for a second to show off this winnow template. The drama manager basically works by taking a bunch of winnow templates and story sifting through the history of the simulation. This example template is a situation where character 1 decides to be cruel to character 2 a lot, and then character 2 decides to be kind to character 1. We don't necessarily know why this happens. It might be because character 2 is just a really kind person. It might be because character 2 is setting up to betray character 1. We don't know, but this is a narratively interesting piece of plot, and so we want this to occur in our simulation slightly more often than it otherwise might. The way that this works on the technical side is we keep a database with all of our simulation data, which includes character names, character traits, which actions have which tags, and a list of all prior actions. Then we also maintain a list of active plot threads. When we're evaluating each given action, we check to see if it advances any existing plot threads, and we basically give that action one quote unquote drama point for each prior action in that plot thread that it advances. So what this means is we're prioritizing actions that advance multiple plot threads. We're prioritizing actions that are really close to completing plot threads. Because obviously, if we're this close to getting a narrative payoff, we really want to get that narrative payoff. And lastly, we also have to keep track of which story threads we actually choose, right? When we choose an action, we go through, we say which story threads does this update, and then we just update all of those things. We also check to see if any new plot threads have spawned. And with all of this, we combine all of that, and it helps characters make choices. So this is demo time. I think I have to go over here for this. To infect myself with a virus, I would have done that already. So this is Shepard. You can see at the top, you have a list of character names and a list of traits. So you can see Madeline has the pious and flirty traits. You can see Peterkin is pious, unfriendly, and royal. You can see Golden is friendly and pious, etc., etc. Below that, you can see the list of all these actions that are being taken. So let's talk about how, for example, character traits affect the way that they act. Let's talk about Felix. We're very likely to see Felix start eating some food or having a drink because we know that Felix is a gourmet. We also know Felix is pious, so he's very likely to do stuff like religious. He might pray, he might lecture someone on religion if he's feeling particularly unfriendly. And you're already seeing some, emergent storytelling here. There are just actions that are causing people to laugh because they, are doing things that we don't expect. So, for example, let's talk about so Madeline just lectured somebody on religion. That's a pious thing. So that happened because of Madeline's pious trait making her want to do so. And then in addition to that, we have all of our story plot threads in the background deciding maybe you, this character, maybe you're going to fulfill a plot thread. So maybe you should do something that you might not want to do as much. And you're just going to do that action because the drama manager says this is narratively interesting. I'm going to go back. So how well does this actually work out? We've found that this does work to produce narrative intrigue while preserving strong autonomy. So we already saw there were things going on that felt like they were connected there. And that's, basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to get those moments of connectedness between events instead of everything just kind of feeling like a complete mess. So we should definitely keep exploring this. A few things about this artifact, though. Number one, it's not interactive, which is kind of out of the norm. The reason for this is primarily because this was intended as a producer of chronicles, not necessarily a producer of narratives. But I do think there's a lot of potential here if we can make an artifact that is interactive and does work with Shepard. For example, we could even have characters behave in different ways toward the player. We could write story templates for experiences we want the player to have, and then characters in this completely autonomous simulation would be more likely to behave that way. And in addition, we found that the randomness of NPC choices made it harder to evaluate the system. That was something we did, we made it random because we wanted NPCs to be able to surprise us. We didn't want them to just kind of be set in their ways, but at the same time, that does make it harder to tell how much of an effect this is having. I remember when I was testing, I basically turned the amount of the drama manager up to 100, so that it was completely overriding all of the characters' autonomy. And so that's how we knew it was working. We wanted more of a balance in the final artifact, but it would definitely also help if we had made it less random. And lastly, currently we rely a lot on player interpretation to actually narrativize this. It would be really cool if we could use the leverage from the plot threads that we currently have to help narrativize these events. And Loose Ends actually did something similar. If you remember from Loose Ends, there's when it's displaying the story templates, it has a little thing declaring, here's where you are in the story template. We could use that information to help narrativize things in our simulation. And so that's Shepard. I'm Sage. I'm, looking for PhD positions at the moment. So if you think this is interesting, if you think this is really cool and this is something you'd like to follow up on, please talk to me. I would be glad to hear from you. You can also scan the QR code up top if you want to see the code from our GitHub. And If you have any questions, I'm willing to hear them. Thank you.